So how is Nairobi?
Nairobi is doing well. A bit of the weather is a bit chilly. It's a bit cold. We had a drizzle in the morning.
Oh, we have also had rain since early morning.
Okay, where are you based?
I'm in Isiolo.
Oh, Isiolo.
Yes.
Oh, I was in Isiolo like almost 5 years back.
Oh, what were you doing? Hey, you should come back and visit us.
Isiolo, I think I was doing some EIA in Isiolo.
For a road, or what was it?
Yeah, I think it was for a road. There was some road within Isiolo town.
Wow.
Yeah. Then I was in Isiolo.
Wow.
Yes, so back to business here.
Yes.
I think you had a conversation with Robina, and perhaps maybe she took you through a bit of what we are doing.
No, she hadn't.
She hadn't.
Maybe you could bring me up to speed concerning what she alluded to yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what we are doing is there is an organization known as Center for Strategic and International Studies which is based in UK.
That's
Center for Strategic and International Studies based in Washington DC. Yeah, so this organization is a leading think tank that supplies bipartisan policy bipartisan policy research. Can you hear me? Yes, so they do research.
Yes, I can hear. I can.
Yeah, research to inform decision making among policy makers and also key influencers. So at the African program, their mission is to raise the profile of African issues within the global context in USA. Yeah, and provide relevant recommendations for adequate engagement on both sides of the divide, that is both USA and Africa at large. So the objective of this specific initiative is to highlight key and critical development in East Africa through research and advocacy.
Yes.
Which is aimed at advancing better African policy making in Washington.
Yes.
Yeah, so the objective of this call is we are trying to engage stakeholders to find out from stakeholders what are they particularly in Kenya. So we are analyzing the Kenyans' approach to addressing climate change.
Yes.
And provide an insight for other African countries. Yeah, so in short, what we are trying to do is we are trying to look at what is Kenya doing well in the climate change space that can be emulated by other African countries.
Yes.
Yeah, what are our successes? What are our challenges? And how can these successes and challenges be a learning lesson to other African countries, and how can they be adopted? So that is what ideally what we are doing, and that is why we are looking. We were looking for you. So as an expert in the environment and climate change space, we are reaching out to different experts and getting to engage them in order to get their views in regard to this. Yeah, so as we kickstart our engagement, we will start with an introduction of who Lydia is. But before that, I can introduce myself. So personally, my name is Robinson Ododa. I am an environment and climate. And I am an environment and climate change expert. We are working. I'm working with Robina on this particular exercise as an environment and climate change expert. Yes. So
All right.
I'll give you the mic. You can do a brief introduction and what you are doing. If it is an organization, what is your organization doing? So that we can be able to get the insight of what is going on in the climate change space. So over to you.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. My full name is Lydia Mburia.
Okay.
With a background in community development.
Okay.
And also with a special resource management.
Sorry,
because
you
most
dropped.
of the time I have.
You dropped a bit.
Oh, sorry. The network keeps on buffering. Let me just repeat.
Yeah.
The full name is Lydia Mburia.
Yes.
With a background in community development.
Okay.
And a specialization in natural resource management.
Okay.
And in addition to that, I have also done strategic environmental assessment.
Okay.
As well as the EIA.
Okay.
For me, I would say the bone of contention, especially environmental matters, one is the legal approach, the policy, and also on the ground during the implementation, and especially in the counties is where we have a challenge. There seems to be a disconnect between the legal frameworks, the policy making, and also the implementation. Because sometimes communities really feel that they are not really being fully engaged in the process of informing the implementation of these EIAs and the SAILs as we do. And also from a community perspective, community development.
Yes.
I would suggest to most of us as climate change experts and also even to people like the environmental lawyers that we need to go back to the drawing board and re-strategize, come up with a proper way of getting to engage communities meaningfully.
Okay.
So public participation shouldn't just be a mere process. It should be seen to work and seen to be followed through by the communities. So for me, largely because I have been doing these SARES and EIAs since 2021 for the last 3, now going to the 4th year, communities sometimes feel disgruntled and they feel there's a disconnect between what they're expected to do, what we as proponents want them to do. So there's a very big mismatch and a big disconnect in the communities and more so in the counties.
Thank you.
Basically, because if you look at the Constitution of Kenya, you realize in the schedules that environmental management is devolved to the counties. So it all depends on how the counties are handling this function. That is why sometimes most of the communities, because we have most citizens in the rural areas, they feel that we are not allowing them their space to take part in this particular process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that intro, Lydia. So just to kickstart our engagement as a practicing environmental and climate change expert, what are the major successes of climate change policies and initiatives that can serve as a model for other African countries?
First and foremost, I'll begin by mentioning what I have done in the past that have formed the successes. And one, I would attribute it to the MCA. You've heard about this. The MCA, there's the MCA 1999 Act, which has a successive amendment of 2015. That one has really enabled us to streamline the way we should implement EIAs and SARES And also, to add on to that is another act of parliament that we have in Kenya, the Public Participation Act, which is also now currently undergoing amendments to enable communities feel that they are indeed part and parcel of actualizing this process. Now, aside from the legal frameworks, I have had successes between 2014 and 2020, pre-COVID time, where I successfully spearheaded an initiative by the net. This simply means Associated Schools Project Network, whereby I was working as a project coordinator, coordinating what we call education for sustainable development in schools. So this was majorly connecting with the primary schools, the secondary schools, the TVETs, and the universities to ensure that we at least are able to actualize the SDGs. The SDGs, especially SDG number 13, although we also have like SDG number 6, number 7, and number 8 that have to do with the issues to do with climate change.
Yes.
That aside, there I have a program that I underwent training. It's the African group of negotiators and experts, which really helped me understand the climate financing issues and how to negotiate, how to go about even involving communities, understanding gender issues to do with climate change. Because climate change is a concern that cuts across the issue in all sectors. It is affecting every sector in our country. It is affecting every sector globally. And not only in terms of climate change, we have geopolitics, we have in Kenya or even globally is being affected by climate change. So I would say those are the few successes, although there are more that are coming up, because again, this is work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Now, moving to the second question, what are the key challenges in implementing the Kenya's climate strategies, and how are they be overcome through national and international partnership? How can they be overcome through partnerships, both national and international?
First and foremost, I'll begin by saying we need to have homegrown solutions in enabling us to tackle these challenges, which I'll mention. And these challenges will begin by getting to understand, getting to solve the bureaucracies that are in place in terms of accessing climate finance, and especially to women and the youth, because that's the gender perspective. There are always obstacles that hinder them from accessing finances, both at the national government and also at the county levels. Okay. So this is something that we experts really need to address, and that is why I'll read in the state that the communities will need to be convinced that they are indeed in this process and that they are meaningfully engaged. So one of the challenges is access to climate finances, of course, because of the time involved, the bureaucracies, maybe because of even as a result of us experts, whether you're in climate change or whichever other sector, there are those challenges, and sometimes communities feel that we're also becoming a stumbling block to them. So that is one of the things that we need to address. So, and how do we address that particular challenge? Is one, adopting an open policy first with the community. Community contributes 80% of the input. That's why I'm really insisting on community participation. And then at another 10% would come from the government, both whether it's local government, county, agencies such as UNEP, and also the national government, because we have a ministry in place that is already dealing with that. The other 10% should come either from the international donors. And I know, as a climate expert, you already know that COP29 is coming to an end. And the question we should be asking ourselves as climate change experts, and personally I'm greatly concerned in as much as I did attend that COP29, is that how much money are we getting from these negotiations? Are we really making progress? Because sometimes I'll have to use an example of access to solar energy in our continent, without really going to the nitty-gritties. Africa is rich in solar energy. In fact, we have around, they were saying, the recent research they did is between 80% to 96% of solar is inhabited in Africa. But when you go to COP29 and look at the way our negotiators, the way the negotiations are going on, you are left wondering how much money we only got 2% of the entire climate financing. So that is also something we need to address. Lobbying our ministries in our country. We have the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment, and all other like-minded stakeholders, even in the private sector. That's when we can address that. Only if we have good political will, that will solve. Because Kenya, we have experts, we have researchers, even up to professorship in our universities. And I don't see us making use of these professors, and they are all over in the country, in our country. So those are some of the concerns that we seriously need to look at and address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Now, how can evidence-based approaches in Kenya's environmental and climate change policy be replicated elsewhere in Africa? Hello?
Hello.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I got you right.
Yes.
Climate change approaches.
Yeah.
I would say, and first of all, I would like to acknowledge the fact, even as a researcher and somebody who is doing climate change matters with the community, there seems to be a disconnect. One, in form of research presented in papers, journals, presented in conferences, vis-a-vis what is being done or rather being implemented in the ground.
Yes.
If you look at counties. And why am I saying this? We always have a tendency, yes, I know we have research institutes, we have Kefri, we have NEMA and the like, which is a good effort because, again, they are meant to also guide doing research and getting to have the best way to apply the approaches. So these climate change evidence approaches, we will need to really engage the community. It all goes back to the community because I believe in every community, the context is different. Why? If you go to the 8 regions in our country, to be more specific, let me use my region, the Upper Eastern region.
Yes.
The Cotton region, where we have 80% is said to be ASAL, arid and semi-arid. The approach or the evidence approach that we would apply in our region is not the same one that we would apply in the southern coast. These are 2 different contexts. So in as much as we really want these methodologies, the data that we are collecting to really help transform the communities, we have to look at the context, the situation analysis. That is something we need to really understand. Before we even embark on writing proposals, yes, we're going to secure funding, but again, at the end of the day, have we looked at every community? Like our example, yes. It is now rain. We are in the rainy season, yes. The short rainy season, October to December. And currently, I am aware there is an initiative by the government to have around 15 billion trees planted by the year 2030, yes. If I'm not wrong. Yes. So in each and every region, I expect those who are coordinating in KFS, KEFRI, to have done a situational analysis together with the community to ensure, yes, we're going to get this right, and we are going to ensure that the survival rate is going to be high. So in as much as we are implementing things, I think we need to face the facts, be realistic, and also get the community to be on board. In as much as, yes, we are going to take papers in parliament, defend them, enact laws, be ascended into law. But again, at the end of the day, is the community really feeling the impact, the positive impact that we are having as experts? Because sometimes there is a weakness, there is a bias that even we as experts have. There's one we call them, yes. And also we feel that it is us who should dictate to the community.
Okay.
Gone wrong. So we really have to go back to the basics and analyze, where did the rain start beating us, and go back to the community. All these things have an effect whereby they are going back to the community. So in as much as we want these facts, the evidence, the approaches, the gender, climate, the financing, we really have to now sort it out first with the community. And remember, the community is the key stakeholder in everything, in every sector. So we cannot afford to ignore the community in as much as we have all this expertise in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Now, in what ways can the Kenyan leadership and experience in managing climate risk inform global engagement, particularly with the United States?
Just refers it, that is ways that leaders.
So in what ways can leadership and experience in managing climate risk inform global climate engagement? Now it's just looking at in what ways can our leadership, the leadership,
yes,
Kenyan leadership and experience that we have in managing climate risk inform the global climate engagement, particularly
global climate engagement.
Yes, particularly looking at the United States, who are the key champion behind this activity. Yeah.
Climate risks. Yeah, I know. I'm very conversant that we have climate risks in climate change, and I would say these climate risks are covered under the climate financing. But what we need to do, and not only just this, not just the role of the government, even us, individual experts, because we are the ones on the ground, the policy implementers and policy makers. One is to have proactive environmental lobbying and advocacy. That is where it all starts.
Okay.
When I talk about this lobbying and advocacy, I mean having a thorough civic education.
Okay.
In matters to do with right from the primary schools, high schools, TVETs, and also universities within each and every of this region, whether it's in private institutions or public institutions. Now, why am I really emphasizing on this lobbying and advocacy? Once you now impart these skills into children, the school-going children from primary, high school, all the way to the TVETs, you are empowering these people with the right information. And I'm not just saying this because we have the CBC. Yes, CBC is there, but we got to have an informal approach to environmental lobbying and advocacy, not just the formal 844, the CBC, whereby people just do exams and pass, but at the end of the day, what impact are we making even to the community? You know, it all starts from the schooling, the early schooling, the ECD, have that kind of an impact. And so that we can even be able to convince USA that this is doable, this is implementable. That is where we need to start. And I'm sure USA is following up, has been following up what we are doing in Kenya in terms of environmental sustainability. So environmental lobbying and advocacy is something that we cannot avoid in our country. In as much as we have all these laws, very good laws from Parliament and from even our lawyers, they are doing a good job. But at the end of the day, we have to go back to the drawing board to find what we call civic education in an informal way. Let us not make it so technical for the community to understand. That is one thing that we need to do. And second is another issue of carbon credit. And I know this one is very controversial even in our country. Now, this carbon crediting, I am looking at an example of even called is also a controversy. The other one is the nuclear. So there has been a debate that has been going on carbon crediting. How do we quantify these carbon credits? How do we compensate the community in Mombasa, in Kwale, in each of these counties? Now, my bone of contention with this carbon crediting is that, yes, there is a policy in place, there is a law in place, but again, is there political goodwill? Even before we get to COP30, because it's going to come, and now we are in COP29. So, even our leaders themselves serious about this carbon crediting? That is the question we need to address. Yes, the community may have been sensitized from whichever part of the country. But again, as we go up, the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach, are our leaders ready to take up this challenge of carbon crediting? We have had issues of coal mining, and somehow this died a natural death. Currently, I know there's an authority dealing with this nuclear energy. It all goes back on crediting. I am made to understand from research, there is the G20, G8 countries. Of course, they have had commitments to climate finance carbon credits. But when it comes to implementation, hapo ndio kuna kizungumkuti. So the only thing we need to do is we need to change the way we are managing the issue of carbon crediting, even in our own country. Otherwise, we continue having a mess, even in the ministry, even us ourselves as the experts. So those that our leaders, even in our parliament, need to deal with. In as much as we want to convince UNEP, to convince USA, because it has to be seen that the facts, the graphs, the scatter plots that we are presenting, the metrics that we are presenting to them are working. Otherwise, USA will not finance us. You know, you have to be realistic. In as much as we have all these statistics, yes, we have done a lot of regression, but at the end of the day, do these statistics reflect any positive impact to the community? And you know, I know USA is very strict on this, and always UNEP that we have in Kenya. Because one of the questions they will ask me as an expert when I go for the next conference, UNEA 7 or UNEA 8, they will ask me, is this practicable? Now that we are saying we want to do environmental lobbying and advocacy through schools, is carbon crediting working? So those are the pertinent questions that we will need to answer as a country. So we cannot avoid that. So those are the two examples that I mentioned. These are the ways that our leaders themselves, and they have to be willing, they have to have the political will to resolve those things. Otherwise, we're going to come and no impact at the end of the day. We kukula tu per diem na kufurahia, but at the end of the day, we are not helping the communities. So that is what I can say.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. Now, can you share any example of successful grassroots initiatives that have helped local communities adapt to impact of climate change? Are there initiatives that you've come across that you know have helped local communities adapt to impact of climate change?
There is one in particular that I have been involved. The Total Energies, they have the Eco Challenge.
Okay.
Countrywide, it runs countrywide, and it's a very successful one. And they have been doing what I am calling now that environmental lobbying and advocacy. They have been engaging with UNESCO AskNet through schools, and it has been very successful. How has it been successful? One, we have managed at least to raise the tree cover in our country to at least over 15% currently as we stand. We are almost now getting to 20% of the tree cover. So, and we also have had Net Fund, that is the National Environmental Trust Fund, which awards the best performing environmental conservation groups in Kenya, the youth groups, the women groups, and they also undertake trainings, the informal trainings, to empower communities, especially women and the youth, on how to make a living from climate conservation as well as increase environmental sustainability in the countries. I have seen groups from all the regions of Kenya having a very positive impact through Net Fund, in partnership of also with the government and also the UN agencies such as UNEP. So those are the most important two initiatives that I have been involved with in terms of getting to have an impact with the communities, the grassroots.
And mentioning those grassroots initiatives, what are the major challenges in implementing these community-based climate change adaptation strategies, and how can they be addressed?
One of the challenges, we have had unpredictable weather patterns, because I remember in 2016, where we had an initiative with the Total Energy, that at that particular time there was enough rain, but in the next season that is in 2018, there was a challenge of water. So sometimes, and you know these indigenous trees, they require a lot of water. So again, we were able to overcome this through a partnership between the Makueni County, the Makueni County government, that came in through the facilitation of US aid and UK aid, and they were able to help us establish water harvesting facilities within the institutes that we were working with. So we were able to comfortably address that particular challenge. So that is one of the challenges that I have encountered while working with this Net Fund and also the Total Energies. But that already has been addressed, because like in Kenya nowadays, we have a lot of erratic rain. Sometimes you expect rain to come, it is erratic, and then crops fail. And not because of it, sometimes, we cannot have so much control on weather patterns. So that has been a challenge, although we have been able to address that. And the second challenge is the political environment. That has to do with the political will. You can be in a county, or rather in a context whereby environmental conservation is not a priority. Well, in some counties, you have it as a priority, because you see, people differ. People are coming from different cultures. People have got different perspectives. So you really have to deal with the political environment, the socio-cultural environment, the legal framework sometimes also become a hindrance. So some of these have been common. Although we still have a lot of learning, I still have a lot of learning as I also work with the communities, and I also carry out research for your organization.
Okay. Now, in what ways have the community-led efforts in Kenya contributed to environmental sustainability and biodiversity conservation? So look at your engagement with the community, the projects that you've engaged. In what ways have community-led projects efforts in Kenya contributed to environmental sustainability and biodiversity conservation?
One, I would say is sustainable development, being able to sustain their projects, and especially to do with the bioenergy. This is the green energy. So green energy has also created green jobs for the youth. Green jobs for the youth. This has also contributed to the green economy. The green economy.
Nice.
So it's a way of creating employment through companies. I have seen very successful companies like Jikokoa, because these are people who engage in the making of, or rather manufacturing of charcoal briquettes, energy saving companies like nowadays we have energy saving bulbs. It has created jobs for people. And also in the counties, we have initiatives such as adaptation to what we call solar energy. Most homes nowadays are connected to solar energy. There is also the use of biogas. Biogas is a green energy that has also created jobs for the youth in the localities, in most of the villages that I have had an opportunity to visit around the country. So those are some of the few things that I have seen very successful, and also sustainable green businesses. They are businesses that promote climate bonds, like the central bank always calls for people to apply for green bonds, whereby people make money. They float their treasury bills and the central bank in our nunulia, so they make money. It's a way of people making online money. So that is unless, because we have more things that we are doing, as time goes by, we continue learning. But those are some of the things that I have seen community-led initiatives achieve.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Finally, as we wind up, how can the Kenyan approach to climate adaptation at the community level serve as a model for other African nations facing similar challenge?
So you're saying, how can the community-led initiatives be replicated, if I got you right?
Yeah. How can the Kenyan approach to climate change adaptation at the community level serve as a model for other African nations facing similar challenges?
These African countries. Here we have it in two ways. You mentioned about adaptation. Adaptation in the long term, mitigation in the short term. So it is possible to replicate some of these, or rather these community-led initiatives, one through adaptation. In adaptation, they've got to set, these African countries can learn from us through setting the long-term objectives in their strategic plans. Because I know every African country has got a Ministry of Environment. So in adaptation, they have got to set the long-term objectives in their strategic plans. And also in mitigation, they have got to come up with short and medium-term objectives in their strategic plan. Because when you come up with these objectives, the short-term, the medium-term, and long-term plans, it actually helps you to track your implementation, the pace of implementation, and how you are able to achieve these particular results at the end of the day. So, another way of approaching it is through what we call the cluster development approach. So when I talk about the cluster development approach in terms of climate change, how Africans can tackle this, one, African countries, this is where the African nations will need to come up with priority sectors. This is what I am calling clusters. Clusters are sectors of each economy, because I know Kenya has different clusters, Rwanda has different clusters, Nigeria clusters, whereby they can now do adaptation and mitigation. Like in Kenya, we have the energy sector. because now our main focus as a sector, the green energy sector, is where we want to always have at least 90% of renewable energy, clean energy. Goal number 6, goal number 7, SDG 7, 6, and 8. 6, 7, and 8. So that is a cluster. If African nations are able to identify their niche, they are able to identify their shortcomings in each and every sector, they will be able to do full implementation of adaptation and also mitigation at the same time, without even necessarily getting to rely on climate financing. It is as simple as that. Once we get it right with the community and we are able to set clear short-term, medium-term, and long-term projects in terms of mitigation and adaptation, as well as the cluster development approach, we will be good to go. And an example, I want to mention an example of Rwanda. Rwanda is a country that is doing very well. In fact, we need to do our benchmarking with Rwanda and get to understand what is it that they are doing right that Kenya is not doing right. Another country I want to mention is India. India, since the time of their independence, have always applied this cluster development approach, and it has really worked in their country. That is why you can see they are doing so well in business, in terms of energy sector, and all other sectors that are in their country. Another very good example is Germany. As you all know, Germany is like Rwanda. When you go to Germany, Germany is very clean. So we need to know what are these things that we are the best practices that we are applicable in Germany that we can also adapt to our country. What suits our context? Because there are things that when you go to Germany, you realize, like they have a proper and sustainable waste management system in their country. And their laws are also stricter. So we need to look at these examples of what these three countries are doing, and also now transfer what is of benefit to Kenya and see what are our shortcomings. What are the shortcomings of Germany, of India, and also of Rwanda? Even Uganda is doing very, very well. It's something that we can do even on a phone call and get to know what we need to address in our country. That is what we need to do. And the third, not least,
yes,
once we do a benchmark of these countries, we can also incorporate our countries, especially the African countries, can incorporate best practices in their legal frameworks in an informal way, even when they involve the communities. It's as simple as that. So it is us as experts to go to the ground, do our homework, and get the community, and get also to learn from best practices both in Kenya and globally. That is when we'll be able to address our issues in terms of climate matters. Otherwise, we will keep on having good research in our universities and publishing, but if we are not making use of those findings, we will end up to nothing. So that's all I can say for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Lydia. I think that marks the end of our engagement. Unless you have something to add.
Yes.
I'm really, really grateful for your time.
Unless you have an addition from your side, how best we can collaborate and move on further with UNEP and the rest, and climate financing in COP30, because I look forward to attend it.
Okay.
Yes.
Of course, the others now we can discuss offline